listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where this week we have a two-part show. In part one, we'll be talking about India's thumping win over England. Where did the hosts get it so right, and who was better, Rohit Sharma or Ravi Ashwin? Then, in part two, we're joined by cricket analyst and long-time friend of the podcast, Dan Weston, to preview the IPL auction. I'm Jack Hope, and as ever, I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. How are you, Max Rowe Brown?
Hello, Jack. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm a little beaten, much like the England team themselves. But I'm going to pick myself back up and get ready for a cracking show.
Yeah, your problem is you emotionally invested. What you want to do is what I do, which is kind of surf the wave of optimism, but never really care that much. Because then when we plunge back down, you can just move on with your day.
No, it's good. It's always good to have an undercurrent of sociopathy. I find it helps.
Yeah. The third wheel on the podcast, Ross Legg. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. Very well. The third wheel. Does this make us like a
I'm not
tricycle?
Sure I'm comfortable with that either, Ross. To be honest.
The Cricket Podcast tricycle. That's what we are, boys. Just to start off with, the cricket. Have England ever gone from such a high to such a low in your time watching the sport?
I mean, not in such a short space of time. I mean, I've seen it over the course of like two series, where we've won the Ashes, then gone to Australia and got absolutely pummeled. But in a week, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have.
Yeah, we've packed a year-long timeline into about 10 days, which is pretty good going. Ross.
I think the anticipation of being at the World Cup was really exciting, and then we lost to the Netherlands. So that was pretty. Oh, it's really exciting. We're going to win everything, and then oh no, Stuart Broad has missed an easy run out, and it's all gone wrong.
But then we did win, so it went the other way afterwards.
Yeah. So India set about annihilating England over the last 4 days. I don't think anyone in the world can complain about the result. Max, you are going to give us the tale of the test in a minute or so. Here, go.
Right. Well, yes. After England's probably equally unexpected and impressive victory in the first test, just got to get that one in there. That did happen. India were looking to bounce back to level the series in the second test in Chennai, and boy, did they. After winning the toss on a pitch already offering some turn, Rohit Sharma produced an absolute masterclass to compile 161, and ably supported by Rahane and once again Rishabh Pant, who really looks like a new man at the moment. India put together what looked like a very imposing 329 in their first innings. Those three aforementioned batsmen aside, the other Indian batsmen struggled a bit, and some of those found their dismissals easier to come to terms with than others, it has to be said. But their trials served to show really just how brilliant Rohit's innings truly was. In reply, England, faced with the brilliance of Ashwin and co, looked simultaneously all at sea like a fish out of water and thrown into the deep end. And if not for a battling 42 not out by Ben Foakes, the beautiful man that he is, England's embarrassing 134 could have been quite a lot worse. If the outcome at that point if the outcome on day one wasn't obvious, at that point it was completely nailed on. And India's second innings, which was punctuated by a brilliant 100 by Ravi Ashwin, just served to rub salt, hydrochloric acid and razor blades into England's already quite festering wounds, leaving them with a rather unlikely 2 and a bit days to survive, or 482 runs to chase down, and didn't last long. So let's focus on the cricket, first of all. Much like England outplayed India last week, India just dominated us in every department, really, didn't they?
Yeah, I think right. So I think there are two things that there are a bunch of things we're going to talk about. I for England fans, we will talk about the pitch, but we're going to do that later. Because I think basically we're all in agreement that whilst tricky, shall we say, didn't really have much of an impact on the actual result. I think, as you say, Max, India came back with a vengeance. The conditions suited them slightly more. I think they got their selection bang on. I think England were caught a little bit by surprise in terms of how they coped with Rohit's explosiveness on the first day. And kind of by tea on day one, the England win was almost an impossibility, wasn't it? I mean, India had started so strongly that you know, England didn't even have time to fight back.
It was for me, the Rohit's innings. It was like one of the classic Verinder Sehwag innings, where it was just pure. He just looked impervious compared to everybody else, and I think his run rate kind of dwindled towards the end of his innings. But he punished England very early on and forced them to abandon some plans, and you could see that England was struggling to deal with it, especially kind of Moeen Ali and the other spinners who toiled away for over 3 or 4 and over.
Yeah, I mean, I think cut above is how I'd probably describe it. Rohit's innings. I mean, Ashwin hit a century in the second innings, which was entertaining, but of a completely different caliber to Rohit Sharma's. I mean, Rohit made a bad or a difficult pitch to bat on look reasonably easy. I think he scored so quickly, and I think basically we got a demonstration of why Rohit Sharma at home is probably the best opening batter in the world. His average is just under 90 now in India.
Wow.
And I think the other thing you saw was really an example of how to bat in those conditions. And what we saw time and again through the match was that the first 30 overs of the new ball were really hard. Like the ball was doing all sorts of crazy things. It was exploding out the pitch. And then after that sort of 30th over, it calmed down a bit and you had a window until the ball got soft again and started to do some weird stuff where you could actually score. Now, to exploit that, let's say 30 or 40 over gap, you need to be explosive. And that's exactly what Rohit Sharma is.
And you also need to be there.
Exactly. So he got himself to lunch. And then that afternoon session when he was batting with Rahane on the first day, he just absolutely dismantled England. They had no answers to him, and Joe Root was cooked basically, wasn't he? In the Chennai sun, he had it was it. That was it. I mean, it was game over by tea, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought Rahane actually did well. I mean, it was a bit of criticism from him from the first Test match, but again, his senior innings did really well, and actually, him and Rohit, as you say, set up the game for India perfectly.
Yeah, I think that's where like you said, that's where the game got away from England, just even in that first couple of sessions, because I mean, you take 100 off of that Rohit score, and suddenly India have putting together 200, and it's a completely different game. And it's really that innings is really what's made the difference. And I think, and to me, it's a difficult argument to make, bearing in mind that the man of the match was Ashwin, and he took a 5 for and scored 100, and is now has surpassed some very big names on the list of people to have done that. I think Rohit's innings probably warranted for me the man of the match award, just because of how big an impact it had on the game. And like you said, Ashwin's 100, while excellent, was a completely different scenario.
I thought I will 100% agree with that. I think it was the best innings of Rohit's career. I think it was one of the best innings in terms of impact on the match. Since anyone's played since Kyle Mayers last week. It was that kind of caliber innings, though. He won a Test match by himself in 2 sessions, in my view.
And that's, I think it's a really key bit that comes back to the pitch comment. But there was a bit where if England would have got on and batted on that first time, even India in that scenario, if Rohit didn't hit those runs, India would have been in trouble. And that was the bit that he was the difference between those two sides. It doesn't matter about the pitch. Rohit's 160 could have been hit by England, could have been hit by India, but Rohit did it and won the game for them.
Yeah, it was the pace that he did it. It wasn't 160 off 320 balls. That kind of innings, I don't even think really would have been possible on that wicket. But he found himself with a window to do it. England weren't bowling that well, and he executed. It was a masterclass basically.
So can we talk about? Oh, yeah, go on.
Oh, I think we were about to say probably the same thing. Shall we talk about the actual man of the match?
Absolutely,
Ravi Ashwin. One of the all-time banter performances. I think from cricket's undisputed banter champ as well. Like, I mean,
all it was missing was a mankad.
It was that was sort of it. I don't know. Does someone want to talk about his bowling in the first innings?
I would actually like to just point out that he's proved you wrong on the batting front. That's my first point I've written down.
Yeah,
you'd written him off in the preview as well as last week.
Well, yeah, he had. I mean, I suppose. Ashwin talked about this himself a little bit. Ashwin's going back to 2017. Only averaged 17, and we said that one of India's potential weaknesses might be that Ashwin at 8 is probably a bit high. They've got quite a long tail. It turns out Ashwin, as Ashwin does, has identified that he had a weakness there. He's been in the net. He's been practicing the sweep. He was talking about this after the innings. Apparently, he hasn't played the sweep shot since he was 19, which was 15 years ago. Recently, he decided he wanted to work on it. He wanted to work on it again. And he pulled it out with aplomb against the English spinners. I mean, hitting one really, really big six off Moeen Ali, I think.
I'm wondering what he's had to do to learn how to play the sweep again, because he's a pretty big unit, isn't he? Did he have to take up yoga, a bit of Pilates? Because he doesn't look like the most agile of guys, does he? So...
No, he doesn't strike me so. I mean, like when I've seen Ashwin bat before, he looks. I mean, he was a batter when he was young. He looks very technically correct. He's quite eye-catching. This innings wasn't really that. I mean, there was one beautiful drive back over Stuart Broad's head, but there were quite a lot of more improvisational shots. I don't know, did you see him batting against Ollie Stone? It was quite early in the morning on day 3. I was up doing commentary. You two might have been asleep. Did you see any of him?
No,
definitely. But basically, he was. England decided they were going to try and bounce him out on the world's slowest pitch, and so they set a field back, and it was clear what was coming. And Ollie Stone came onto bowl, and he bowled it halfway down. The ball was probably getting up to about armpit height, not very quick. And Ashwin, with his bat basically upside down, was swatting the ball back down the wicket like someone performing a two-handed forearm smash.
No. That's the Ganguly child. That's the Ganguly child catcher. That's what you're going for.
It was a little bit like that. It looked like he was trying to catch someone with a net or club a seal. It was quite effective. He was scoring lots of runs. I mean, it was obvious what England were trying to do, and he was just like, "No, I'm not having any of that." I mean, like Jofra Archer gave me some treatment in the last test, and now it's my turn. He was good, wasn't he? He was good, and he managed to humiliate a few of the England batters for good measure along the way.
Yeah, he's just such a canny operator, and I love watching him bowl. There's just that bit where you're watching it, and he's just I think on Channel 4 or whoever's is it Hotstar, Disney, whoever owned the rights, but they went around what his different load ups were and did a couple of graphics around how just the slight variations and how it comes out a little bit differently, and you can get a pitch that kind of goes in your favour, but to capitalise on it in the way that he did in the first innings, I thought he bowled unbelievably well.
Yeah, you still have to put it in the right place, don't you? And as we've seen, it's entirely possible to still bowl badly on a friendly pitch and get punished. I think a couple of things on Ashwin. One of the things that I find so impressive is, like you say, the control he has, just how he can change very, very slightly the direction of the seam and how it spins in flight, and how that affects how the ball reacts off the pitch. That is clearly a skill that has been refined over a long period of time, and very impressive. And I think you talked about him being canny. Nothing epitomized that better than Dan Lawrence's wicket in the second innings, where he saw him coming and just fired it down the leg side with Rishabh Pant performing a pretty incredible stumping. Actually, it has to be said. That was stunning, a full length dive. But it was just like, yeah, he saw it, and he'd obviously picked up because the night before Dan Lawrence came in, and he'd sort of decided, you know what, he's played about 2 or 3 times. He played the same shot where he skips down the wicket and played that sort of drive lofted over mid wicket, and it was almost the first thing he tried to do today. And Ashwin was like, well, I know what to do here.
Yeah, I think. I mean, one of the things that makes Ashwin really good to watch. I think, and I've been trying to. We've sort of said he's clever, but what does clever mean from the perspective of a spin bowler? And I think it's that he's one of the few spin bowlers in the world who is good enough to get wickets by trying things. If you look at a lot of spinners, and I think probably the English spinners are quite guilty of this, they try things and it doesn't come off and it ends up going for 4, and you're sort of like, why couldn't you just hit a line and length? And then on
know your limits, basically.
Well, yeah, and then there are some spinners that really take line and length to an extreme. Nathan Lyon's one of those, an incredibly consistent guy who doesn't really do loads with the ball necessarily, doesn't really have many tricks, but will just nail that line and length, ball after ball after ball. So his pitch map, when Hawkeye display it, it looks like about 3 balls, and then you see he's bowled 800.
Against 60% of batsmen, you will just bore them out doing that.
Yeah, Ashwin's one of the few people who have got such good control and so many different variations, and it is so clever that he can bowl in different areas of the pitch and have a pitch map that looks, maybe a little bit Don Bessie, but is doing that to take wickets. And I think that's really interesting to actually, you can almost, in hindsight, you can kind of see the thought process he's gone through to take some of those wickets. And I think that's just like such a cool thing. It's such a cool thing to have that ability. It's what makes him that engaging. Obviously, he doesn't throw in the full tosses that Don Bess does as well. So I think that really is it demonstrates how when Ashwin doesn't bowl the perfect line of length, it's normally because Ashwin didn't want to bowl the perfect line of length.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a bit of a love-in for Rohit and Ashwin. Max, you,
I think, to be fair, I think they probably deserved it, didn't they?
Yeah, he did miss out. He did miss out on 10 wickets on 100. He'd have been only the 4th player ever to do that. So I think the only
blot on his copybook.
Yeah. Well, the only active player to have achieved that is, of course, Shakib Al Hassan, boys. Come on.
Ah.
Who else?
Who else?
Colin de Grandhomme.
No, he gets to 9 and then goes, "No, I've taken this too far."
So, Max, you mentioned Rishabh Pant and how his keeping was much improved in this Test match. He was almost perfect, wasn't he?
Oh, it's brilliant. We pitch later, but one great thing about the pitch with the turning that we saw was we got to see some brilliant wicket keeping from both sides. Mm-hmm. And Rishabh, I didn't know he was that good. Basically, some of the takes he was taking where it was exploding off a length, and he was just, but getting his hands into positions that look nigh on impossible. It's like as a very amateur wicketkeeper, I understand to a degree at a very slower pace the difficulty with a ball bouncing more than you expect and trying to get your hands up to your shoulders and trying to like wheel your body around. And Pant did that so many times and looked so good. I'm really impressed. Really impressed.
Yeah, he was good. Kohli was pretty good too. He had a good second innings. I don't know.
Not great first innings, was it? Didn't cover himself in a huge amount of glory either with the bat or afterwards.
No, that's the second time he's been bowled in 2 matches, and prior to that, he hadn't been bowled in a Test match since 2018. So
is that why he was so surprised?
Yeah, I think I don't think we really need to dwell on Kohli here. I think we're going to chat about him and some of his other antics a bit later.
Yeah,
but it was interesting. The Ashwin Kohli partnership, in terms of the different approaches they took to taming the pitch, which they did basically on day 3. Ashwin was like the freewheeling hitter playing upside down cricket bat shots. Kohli basically put away the drive and was just like, I'm not going to play that. I'm going to trust my defense. He was talking about after the game. And I'm going to grind my way to some runs here. And he was really the only player in the whole game that was able to pull off that kind of ground out hard runs innings, which was good.
Yeah,
Finally,
that's a good point. Actually, a lot of the runs that came in that game were from people going for it. Like Ashwin took it to the England bowlers. Moeen Ali's little cameo today, and Pant obviously. So yeah, that's a good point and one that should be lauded and credited to Kohli for his ability to do that.
Finally, then in the India loving, and then I think I might need a quick break before we move on to England. Was Axar Patel making his Test debut? Pretty good conditions if you're a spinner to make your Test debut in, but he'll be happy with his work, won't he, Max?
Yep. I mean, was it a fifer in the second innings? So you can't complain about that. I think that was an example there that maybe India, as you mentioned earlier, Ross, got their selection right this time. It's not a fair comparison, I suppose, to for Shabazz Nadeem, because the first Test wasn't quite as helpful to him, and whether he would have been better off on this pitch, I don't know, but I doubt it somehow. I think that might have given England a bit more of a chance had he been playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Axar, I mean, obviously he bowled well, and he is in the Nathan Lyon category of spinners who relies on consistency to be an effective operator in Test cricket. Or it looks like he will be. He's only played one match.
But that's absolutely fine when you've got Ashwin at the other end to try shit, isn't it?
Sure. I did think that his fifer in the second innings maybe did illustrate how difficult it was to bat on. Though we've seen him in the IPL a lot. He took 9 wickets in the whole of the IPL, bowled 51 overs. I probably saw 35 of those overs thinking back. And at no point did I think, here's a guy who'll be spinning a team out on the 4th day. But, you know, he did. And again, yeah, it's that consistency and that the ability to just plug a line and length, I suppose, on a wicket like that was the difference. It was that kind of bowler that really was the difference, I think, between the two sides. So whilst I'd be surprised if Axar Patel maintains his average of 14 in Test match cricket for more than one game, he was in many ways the perfect bowler doing the perfect thing, I thought, in that 4th innings.
Yeah, I'm not too sure on his look that he's going for, though. Someone really needs to have a word with him, because he's got some pretty budget sunglasses and he's balding. Kind of looks like he's in a midlife crisis in the middle of TK Maxx. So there we go.
Yeah. Right, fellas, shall we take a really quick one, a couple of minutes, and then come back with England and some of the controversies. So there were some good controversies in this match, and we'll talk through all of those.
Yes, so England, we were on a bit of a hiding, really, and it almost felt like the game was almost lost just before the toss, really. Obviously, Archer ruled out. We took a winning side and made 3 or 4 changes, but that is to say that we also had some pretty good players come in. So I thought Ollie Stone did actually reasonably well on his performance and fulfilled that role relatively well. And Ben Foakes, Max, you always touched upon the keeping in this Test match. He was pretty good to watch, wasn't he? He was a bit of a silky operator.
Yeah, a little reminder there that he is one of the best, and a good pitch for him to showcase those talents as well. It was it's just further evidence that maybe when you go to places like Sri Lanka and India, you want to consider having your best keeper, and he batted all right as well.
Yeah, I think, not to hijack things here too much, but the Foakes debate that was going on, in British cricket media, English cricket media, really is illustrative of how little cricket a lot of English cricket fans and cricket journalists actually watch. There seems to be a narrative around Foakes that he's some guy who's amazing with the gloves, but literally doesn't know which end of the bat is the one you hold. Like the guy's a good batter. Like he could play, and I think he has for Surrey played as just a pure batsman. He bats in the top 5 for like a good county. He averages over 40 in Test cricket into his 6th Test now. I actually reckon that if he were a bit less good or a bit less noticeably good at wicket keeping, he might be in the frame, or he might have played a few more Test matches. He's been pigeonholed to such an extent as this kind of Jack Russell redux that people have just forgotten that he has another skill.
It's quite a perverse argument to make, but it genuinely doesn't sound beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, we have to consider when Trevor Bayliss was the head coach for England, he even said, I don't have the time to go and watch these guys play cricket, so I'm just going to go on reputation and what my mates tell me. Lo and behold, Ben Vokes is nowhere to be seen. Anyway, the openers, dreadful again. Unsurprising, really. Rory Burns looks like a musketeer, and he's all out of ideas.
Oh,
So-
can we just, with Rory Burns, before we get on to anything to do with his batting, can we just deplore what he's done with his hair on his face and on his head?
No, big fan of the hair.
Yeah,
I think the
Really?
whole what it is, Matt.
Look,
is
he's
the-
not an Aussie. He can't get away with it.
It's the cognitive dissonance between dour opener and rock star look.
Right.
That you can't get your head around here. If Stokes looked like that, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
No,
You'd be
I'd
all right
also
with
think he looks like an idiot.
Or if Ollie Pope was rocking that look, you'd be like, yeah, that's a guy who enjoys life. And
Ben
and
Folks is
and
the
he's
only
got-
man in that team that I would allow to sport that look.
I will pull you up on one thing there, Ross. I don't think you can say England's openers again. Dom Sibley played probably the second most important innings of the first test. Whatever happens to him in this series now, I think he's performed. Like I think he could get four more ducks, and probably you'd say not great, but did do this amazing thing one time.
Yeah, but that's probably fair enough. It's just that bit where Rory Burns had a torrid time, and it just wasn't convincing whatsoever. And I think on the Sibley front, you're right. He played really well in the first Test match. It's not the time to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But Sibley could have been better, and I think I think both of his dismissals he could have done something about, let alone reviewing the LBW, which was
think
hitting
about
middle of middle.
How far he's come since that first test in Sri Lanka, where he looked like he didn't have a clue what to do. And he's worked on it. And clearly you can see that he's tried to make some changes. And we saw those successfully in the first test in India and the second test in Sri Lanka. So it's understandable that he's still going to struggle a bit. And I think that was somewhat epitomized in this test. Both Sibley and Burns looked a little short of ideas, I suppose, on how to deal with what was presented to them.
Well, they weren't the only ones, were they?
No.
Step forward, Dan Lawrence, Ollie Pope.
I think this is an interesting one. The narrative that has built already is that Dan Lawrence's time is up, or his current time is up. I'm sure he'll come again, but he has to go home now, or he has to go on the naughty step, or carry the drinks. Whatever happens to a cricketer when you're no longer wanted by your international side, but you can't go home because of a pandemic. That's what's happening to Dan Lawrence now.
Well, you can go home.
But I don't think Ollie Pope really offered much in the way of or in the last match either really offered much in the way of an obvious plan of action when it comes to scoring runs or not being out, which are for people not experienced in the world of cricket, the two most important things to focus on when you are a batter. And I think, I don't really think there's much England can do. If we're going to be playing on surfaces like the one that we had in the second test, I don't think any of these English players are really equipped to deal with that. And I think we'll lose the next two test matches. And I don't think there's really anything we can learn from it either. I'm really fatalistic about the whole thing.
I think you're right, though. I think you're right.
I think probably slightly more broadly than that is that the English attitude is obviously going to be, well, fuck it. Like if this is what we have to play on, then I'm not interested in improving my skills. And I know that in the summer, like the groundsmen around England will retaliate for me. And we're going to get into pitches later. I don't really like that, the obvious tit for tat narrative that's going to develop around this. What I would say, though, is that I think England need to be a little bit careful here. And I think they really do need to assess what it is that made Kohli and Ashwin successful in the second innings, what it is that made Rohit successful in the first innings, and think to themselves, what about their games can we replicate so that we have a chance in the next two games? Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I also don't think that any of that sentiment that you got to talk about there is coming from the England dressing room. Like
No, sorry, I'm going to cut you off there because two England players liked tweets about how bad the pitch was. And I know that's like really sad to know that, but Stuart Broad and Ben Stokes were liking people commenting about how the pitch was unplayable or the pitch was disgraceful. Mark Waugh, we retweeted it to be fair. Mark Waugh put one up. There's a couple of sentences being like, "Oh, it's all right for the pitch to spin, but this is disgraceful. You can't play Test cricket on that." And Broad and Stokes have liked it. So I think there's definitely an attitude among the English players that like, well, if we're going to be served up with this, the whole game is pointless. Yeah. And I think that's kind of okay for Mark Waugh, who's retired, to say. It's probably okay for us to say as like amateur pundits on the game. You can't be playing for England and having an attitude that, you know, fuck it, like we're not going to win here, and why even try? You have to try. Your job is to try and solve those problems, and I don't think we saw that in the first game. And I think the points lots of people were making about how that is the same surface for both sides, and it didn't disintegrate massively from innings to innings or day to day, but the Indians managed to score 600 runs on it. That's what England need to be thinking about in the next 8 days is how, like, maybe not 600, but how do we get 500 and make it difficult for India?
Well, some of these England batsmen perhaps just need to go to Somerset for a title decider in the county championship, and maybe they'll experience some similar conditions. But I think you're absolutely right about the fact that England should be able to take lessons from the way Kohli and Sharma and etc. played, because we know that the batsmen in this team, certainly two of them, and by the looks of it, a few more of them as well in this England team, are really good. They're top class batsmen, and there is absolutely no reason why, if they can be top class batsmen at home in England, where the ball's seaming around at pace or swinging, that they can't use the skills that they have to try and find a way of combating the ball when it spins lots. Like, that's the crux of it for me.
I mean, I think England's maybe their slight problem. I think maybe this is a broader point for another show, is that on those wickets, the way they play, they will struggle, and we've praised them for their patience in the previous three matches. But that wasn't a wicket for patience, I'm afraid. Like if you got in, you needed to cash in immediately. Yeah. Because eventually,
a year and a half ago, we had Trevor Bayliss in charge, and that's what they tried to do in every Test match. So we know they can do it. It's just pick the battles, right? Sure,
you have to read the room a little bit on that. I mean, I don't know. We're probably not going to solve the batting debate now. Did
I just think it's only one Test match, and everyone going, let's rip up the game plan. Chris Silverwood needs to be fired. Moeen Ali's going home because he doesn't care about cricket.
So England, isn't it?
I'm not even. It winds me up that people put so much faith in what Michael Vaughan tweets or what idiot other podcasters do, like the one that rhymes with Ticket Nadja, who's deliberately trying to stir the pot to get himself a few more followers. Grow up, mate. He compared Jack Leach and said his career's over, and compared to Simon Kerrigan not 2 weeks ago. It's people
now Ross, where we can't throw stones when it comes to trying to create controversy to get extra followers on Twitter, when you consider what we do on Twitter sometimes. But you do have a point. Reactionism is not befitting.
We did do a poll on one day asking who was player of the day, Ashwin, the pitch, or the umpire. So we definitely need to wind our necks in a bit if we're going to throw around accusations or instructions about who should do what on Twitter.
How to carry yourselves on social media.
Look, I agree with your point though, Ross. I think it's one Test, really, really odd conditions for England to bat in. If the next two Tests are similar to that, England have to be better. I think you can kind of give them a pass on this one in the context of how much they have improved batting-wise in the last year. And they have. Like we were talking last week about how they get to 400 nearly every other game now, and they hadn't done that really at all under Bayliss.
Yeah. And it's a work in progress as a team, isn't it? We got to remember that.
It still is. Stick with the process. If you get a slightly more, if you get a pitch that fits the English skill set slightly more, then they'll be competitive. And I think they just have to trust in that. And if they get a spinning demon, they have to hope that Root wins the toss. They have to hope they bowl better, and they need to score another 200 runs across the game. All pretty difficult things to do, but it does segue us on nicely to the bowling. What did you make? We might as well just talk about let's start with the positive. What do you think of Ollie Stone coming into the side?
I thought it was the right decision. First of all, we discussed it briefly, didn't we? Before extra podcast, we had a conversation about what we thought might happen once Archer was ruled out, and I think we thought maybe they might go for Broad and Anderson. We were concerned that maybe they'd bring in Wokes because that would be an England thing to do. But ultimately, if you look at the blueprint that England have tried to put together, particularly for games overseas where you've got one person to try and get reverse swing going and one bit of extra pace plus Ben Stokes, then Ollie Stone was 100% the right person to bring in, and he definitely didn't do himself any harm with his performance. Actually try and get some words out there, but I was impressed. I think he worked hard and he got some good wickets, and ultimately, well done Ollie Stone.
No, I thought he was particularly impressive blowing away the tail on that second morning
when the spinners weren't doing anything.
Yeah, well, India had got to 300 for 6. Ollie Stone bowled a spell that basically meant they didn't really score very many more runs. And 329, look, that was probably 100 runs more than par. But had India slogged their way up to 400, England would, they could have batted 5 times and they wouldn't have won this match. So maybe it saved England's blushes a little bit. The other two bowlers who bowled most of the rest of the overs, Leach and Moeen. Look, probably not their finest test is my basic assessment of them. I don't know if that's fair enough. They did take a few wickets.
Yeah, they took all of the wickets in the second innings, didn't they? But you would sort of, at that stage, you would kind of expect the spinners to be taking the wickets, and Jack Leach has still got a demon in the shape of Rishabh Pant by the look of things.
Did he not get him out twice?
He did. He got the stumpy, didn't he? But he still went after him a bit.
So
and
I actually thought Leach. I thought Leach was all right. Actually, I didn't think he was as bad as kind of the doomsayers are saying. I think it's an improvement if you compare to what he was bowling in Sri Lanka compared to what he's bowling now. He is kind of England's premier spinner, and I think he's kind of going into that mould. He might not get it right, but at the same time, he's also coming up against some of the best players of spin in the world. Moeen Ali hadn't played Test cricket for 18 months, for one Test in 18 months, and actually coming in to that situation. Him going at 4 and over, yes, it's not the most ideal situation, but the guy had COVID, hasn't played much cricket. What are we kind of expecting in that scenario? To me, the team selection felt a little bit just like England almost had a gut feeling that India were going to produce a bit of a turner. I think they probably got their selection wrong in picking Stuart Broad. When they saw the pitch, I think they should have gone, actually, do you know what, guys? Why don't we risk it with something a little bit different? They've got someone like Matt Parkinson in the squad, or add another batter in there and try at least to hit some runs on it. So that's my 2 pence on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some selection questions.
Well, Jack predicted the pitch, didn't he? Jack predicted it would be a turning pitch. Maybe they should have just listened to him.
But look, what was it? We predicted something else last week that was good, but
that India would win.
I don't know. I actually don't think the England bowlers were that good. I mean, I think Leach was a bit better. Maybe unlucky not to pick up a few more wickets. I don't think Moeen really delivered, and I think, Ross, for a lot of the reasons that you sort of mentioned, he's coming back into the team in a cameo role when he knows he's going home after this Test match, He's had to spend 20 days in quarantine. He's barely played in the last 18 months. Apparently, when he got out of quarantine and bowled in the nets in Sri Lanka, he cut his hand open on the seam of the ball because his hand had gone a little bit
Skin had
soft.
gone so soft. Oh my god.
Yeah, so that probably held him back. Like his preparation probably wasn't ideal from that perspective as well. I can't help but think that he was put in basically an unwinnable position there. England were really clear that they dropped Bess for Moeen. And when you do that, what you're basically saying is that this guy's going to come in and we think he's going to be better. But we've all seen Moeen before. He's actually quite a similar bowler to Bess. And I think to expect something radically different was probably wrong as well. I think probably what we should celebrate is that he bowled a couple of really fucking good balls. But as probably has been the theme for Moeen's career, also bowled quite a lot of fairly average balls. I think the other big talking point around him, of course, will be that Root said after the game, and I think this is probably not great language from Root, I reckon. So Moeen is going home as planned for the third and fourth test, so he can have a rest. He's been away for 2 or 3 months now. He's got a young family. He's going to go back for the white ball games, and then he might go and play the IPL if he's picked up on Thursday as well, which would mean he could potentially have been away from home for 5 months, which is a pretty long time. Mm-hmm. It got to this test, and apparently England asked him, "Can you stay on for the next 2 tests?" Moeen Ali said, and I think it's fair enough, no, I've been told I can go home. I'm going to go home. I want to see my family.
Which I think is completely fair enough.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, though, Root came out after the game and he said Moeen won't be available for next game, and he's chosen to go home. And that set everyone off, didn't it? That, if anything's going to trigger people, Moeen Ali going home from a big series in India after he's taken 8 wickets in a match, having been recalled to the side, it's a red rag to a bull. Poor choice of words from Joe Root, don't you think, Ross? Or Max, or whoever?
Go on, Max.
I was going to say, with just as watchers of cricket and the England cricket team, we need to remember some of the incidents that we've had in the past with mental health, such as Jonathan Trott and Marcus Trescothick, and those sorts of issues where people have left tours in really difficult circumstances for them. And we just, in the current climate where things are as bizarre as they are, and having been locked up for 20 days or whatever it was that Moeen Ali was in quarantine, you need to see the bigger picture, don't you? And think, actually, these are people, and they they've got other aspects to think about, especially the confusion, I suppose, if you want to call it that, about how it's come about does adds to that, doesn't it? In terms of, England need to be clear and they need to be supportive of their players in these situations. And it seems like I assume he just misspoke, but it's not sort of suggesting support, is it? For
no, yeah, I think it's quite an unfortunate use of language there, particularly with respect to how far England have gone to emphasise that Stokes and Butler and Archer and others as well have had rests, and it's all part of the plan and it's normal. It's not necessarily it's England's role as an employer, if you like, to be really banal about it, is to look after their employees, and that's what they're doing when they don't pick Stokes for Sri Lanka. It just didn't come across like that for Moeen Ali. I don't think you can really blame Root. That's not his job, and his job is to captain a cricket team. And he's just been thrashed, and they're asking
he's probably
about
knackered after being just flattened for 3 days.
And he's talking about a player he probably does want to stay there, who is going home. Not well managed by England in general, I think.
Yeah, I just don't understand. If you've got a selection policy that you're sticking to, use it as the excuse at every opportunity. Like, you've got the perfect out. You don't need to say Dom Bess is dropped. You don't need to say Moeen Ali has chosen to go home. You've got the perfect excuse, and it's just poor from England, I think. And it just gives fuel to the fire for people to sit on Twitter and have a go.
Also, didn't need to say it today.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Right. I am kind of wary, or I'm quite worried that might be the end of Moeen Ali in an England Test shirt. Hopefully we see him again, but if you look at England's schedule coming up over the summer and then into Australia, there's not an obvious point for him to return. But we'll keep an eye on it, and I'm sure.
I think that's probably up to Don Bess.
Well, yeah,
the
it
rest
may
of
well
this
be
series and maybe the start of New Zealand. Is it next?
It is, yeah. It may well be.
It doesn't matter. He's going to lead us to ODI and T20 glory at the next World Cup, so let's not worry too much about it.
Fellas, shall we move on to the 2 or 3 controversies that we've got?
Absolutely.
Let's start with let's start with the India captain, because that's probably the least talked about, but maybe the one that will have the most impact on the rest of the series. Virat Kohli, after he didn't get an LBW decision against Joe Root on the evening of the third day, which looked reasonably out, went and got in the umpire's face, as they'd say in pro wrestling.
Remonstrated,
exactly. With the umpire in quite an aggressive way. Fellas, what did you make of that? And Kohli, he's got a couple of demerit points already on the ICC's demerit point scale. Do you think we might not see the India captain for the next Test match?
I think I don't know exactly how many points he's got, but
2.
He should 2. And what's is it 4 for 3 for a ban? Probably we shouldn't. We probably shouldn't. I on previous shows we've done stuff about demerit points in the past, I think, and I've looked at some of the wording on the ICC website about what it constitutes a demerit point, and questioning the umpire's decision and sort of aggressively is definitely worth a demerit point, and that is definitely what he did. And if he gets away with it, then you might be leaning towards some questions of favoritism towards some of the bigger players in cricket, because personally for me, what he did was unacceptable. And it was definitely close to being out. You might say that the umpire probably should have given it, but you look at the ball tracking, half the ball was still outside off stump when it hit Joe Root. So the decision is the decision, and that's sort of how umpires call works, and you've just got to deal with it. And we'll get onto some other umpiring decisions later on, but I don't think he can have too much to complain about when it comes to umpiring decisions in that game, and the fact that the game was definitely over. England were like what 50 odd for 3 at that point, chasing 482 with 2 days left in the game. Get over it, mate.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would add to that, I think that's a pretty good summation of the situation, to be honest, Max, unless Ross is going to come up with a wild card take. I think Kohli kind of did that because, right, so in my mind, and maybe I've been a big conspiracy theorist here, but Kohli's going into this match having lost 4 consecutive games as India captain, which is a pretty unprecedented run for one of the best Test teams in the world, and I think their most successful captain as well. So I think he was under a reasonable amount of pressure, and I think that what he basically wanted to deliver, and I think he probably instructed had some input into the pitch as well. It was what he wanted to deliver was a massive India win, and I think probably on top of that, he didn't really want there to be many caveats to that win. And so the fact that the umpiring had been pretty fucking average, and that averageness had been largely, massively in favour of the India side, provided one of those caveats. And so I do wonder whether his remonstration there was a little bit dramatic, just to emphasise the point that these umpires have not been great for both sides.
They should ban the prick.
Right, next controversy. Then we might as well stick with umpiring. As we've mentioned, one of the incidents. Would either of you like to talk us through what happened in this match with respect to the umpires?
Max, you love the rules.
I was just waiting for you to say that.
I'm just half expecting you to have a white coat and put your umpire
confirmation.
clicker in your pocket.
Okay, so point one then. We'll start with point one. It was Rohit Sharma, and while he was on 100 and something, 100 and a lot. I mean, but we should probably point out before we go into like the umpiring things, they actually had absolutely no impact on the result of the game whatsoever. Ooh. Like they are completely inconsequential to the end result of the game. But we should talk about them because they were that bad. Rohit Sharma, the first one, Rohit Sharma, Ben Folkes, really quick work behind the stumps, takes his bells off, appeals for the stumping, goes to the third umpire, and this one, I think it looked to me like it was out, and it looked to quite a lot of people like it was out, and that there wasn't a part of the foot behind the line. But I think it was close enough that the umpire could make the argument that he couldn't give it.
Yeah, I actually would probably have erred on the side of not out, to be honest. So I don't think it would have been a disgraceful one either way.
I mean, is benefit of doubt to the batsman still a thing? Because in that case,
what I'd probably say was weird about that was that normally, when the third umpire or the guy operating the DRS makes a decision, they're very clear about talking you through what they're looking at, what frames they want to check, what angles they want to check, and you get a full description of the process. You didn't really get that with this. You saw it from one angle, then you saw it from another angle, and then he went, I'm going to make my decision.
And normally they tell them what to put on the screen as well, don't they? But he was just like, I've made my decision. And then the screen says not out. And I was like, what?
There's not normally much of a surprise, but right up until the point when the camera was on the screen, we were all like, well, this could go either way.
Yeah. An audit trail would have helped.
Yeah, basically that. I wouldn't have been disappointed with it going either way. I'd say 70% out, 30% not out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can. This one, if it was as an isolated incident on its own, you look at that and you're like, all right, fair enough. Don't have too much of an issue with this. Unfortunately, not very long afterwards. Was it Rahane? This one where
yes,
the ball beats the bat, hits the pad, bounces up off the pad, and England take the catch and go up with an appeal. Quite a strong appeal. They looked pretty convinced. Wasn't given out. They referred it to the TV umpire. The TV umpire looked at the ball passing the bat at first. There was no edge. Looked at the ball hitting the pad, and then said, "Okay, it's not out." At which point the England players were like, "What are you doing? We like after it hit the pad, it hit his glove on the way up. Why haven't you checked that?" The umpire on the pitch nodded, fully understanding what Joe Root had said, and then they proceeded to check the LBW, which no one had asked for, and then they just moved on. And it was just, I mean, what I didn't understand with that one is that Joe Root had clearly had a conversation with the umpire and asked, look, he was touching his hand to say, like, I think it hit his hand on the way up. Are you checking that? It looked like the umpire nodded, and Joe Root said, okay, like Joe Root looked like he'd got a positive confirmation that they were looking at that. Then they checked the LBW and just moved on, and everyone was just completely stunned. And obviously, shortly afterwards, they showed what happened, and it hit his glove on the way up. And then England's backroom staff went and complained to the match referee and got their review back.
Did they complain, or was it Mark Butcher for president?
Mark Butcher for president, yeah.
Was he the one who made all the difference?
Well, let's choose that as the narrative. Let's go with that.
What I didn't really get about this one was like how far away from the protocol it was. And this, I mean, it's a pretty banal, boring thing to talk about. But there's supposed to be a process when you're the DRS umpire, which this guy had never been before, apparently. That's a problem. But you're supposed to check, you're supposed to check, were there any catches? Were there any LBWs? And go through all these different things. The fact that he didn't get to the LBW until the on-field umpire was like, can you double check the LBW? Shows that he wasn't even following the most basic protocol. The other thing I didn't really get, and again, we didn't hear anything from this guy. I did have his name down. I've lost it, unfortunately. We didn't hear anything from him talking about why he was giving it out or not out, besides like, oh, it's missed the bat on the way through. I don't know, just a massive, massive error, basically.
I find it hard to believe he can be that bad. Like,
well, I'd see this is
organically.
I think probably No, I think he was that bad organically. I just think he didn't really know what he was doing. Probably had no experience using technology. If you've never done the role before and you've not been
And
trained
hopefully he'll
properly,
never do it again.
well,
Unless
he was
someone
good on the
bloody
field. But
trains him.
This is it. He was on the field for the first test. The umpiring was excellent in the first
Yeah.
test. The on-field umpiring was fine. So I don't think like this guy's in the pocket of Virat Kohli or something like that. Like it's pretty clear he just didn't really know how to do his job.
Yeah, but I don't understand how, because it's not exactly like one of those things where one doesn't really need to be. You could do TV umpiring from any part of the world, but there's also a bit here around, as you say, following protocol, but just the basic steps. He would have
Common
watched.
sense.
Yeah, he would have watched other people be third umpire. He's not going, what's this magical replay that we've got? What is it? Like, he knows what to do.
Well, I don't know if he will have though.
On the first take where it beat the bat and hit the pad, it looked like he just cut it short immediately. It was like
Yes.
the tape could have run on. He was just like, no, that's enough. And it's like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, so this is where he needs to be, because he's not the TV director. That's not his skill. He is asking someone else for the footage with the snickometer or the ball tracking, whatever it is. There's a really, everyone knows it. It's
umpire to TV director.
Yeah, just rock and roll that.
Yeah, exactly. We've all heard this. He wasn't doing any of that. He just got some pictures and was like, I didn't hit the bat. Let's go back on field. And then the umpire on the field was like, you didn't do the LBW. And he looked at that for 2 seconds, basically laughed and went like, oh, that's miles outside leg stump. Back on field we go. He needed to talk to people. He needed to talk to the TV director and about what he needed. And he can't assume, and I think this is probably what happened, he can't assume that the TV director knows anything about cricket or what might have happened.
No.
Like, the TV director probably is just somebody who has technical skills in TV productions. Probably just someone from Disney who knows how to operate whatever thing it is to go from camera 1 to camera 3. And that's why you need that technical expertise. Ross, I think your point about that you could third umpire this from anywhere in the world is maybe the learning point, if you like. Why is there not a specialist user of this technology,
like VAR in Stockley Park?
Well, what a wonderful example that is. But you think in cricket, like it's reasonably self-contained. Like it shouldn't be too hard. Why can they not get somebody who knows how to use a laptop in to do this job?
Yeah, and umpires, Max, as you well know, they love the rule side of things. If you're an umpire,
well, they should do, shouldn't they?
You want to check all the different bits. You want a bit of access to it. I think it's an umpire's wet dream. Anyway, let's go on to the third bit. So, Max, what else was what other travesties happened?
Well, I'll summarize this one quite succinctly. Basically, Rohit Sharma was out LBW because he wasn't playing a shot, but apparently he was playing a shot. I don't quite understand how the deciding of playing a shot works, Jack. I think you have a bit more knowledge on this, sort of maybe based out of something that happened in the Australia series, in that whether the umpire is supposed to tell the captain or not, or because it looks like
my understanding basically, and I think actually the way the rules are written are fairly opaque on this. My understanding is that the on-field umpire watches it, makes a decision in their head, then they don't tell anyone, and then the captain on the field, if he wants to review it, he has to guess what the umpire is thinking in his head to see whether to before he makes the review. So obviously on this occasion, the ball has hit Rohit miles outside off stump. So if he's playing a shot, it's not out. Joe Root has guessed what's in the umpire's head, and he said, I'm going to play the no-shot card. And the umpires immediately said, nah, he was playing a shot, mate. And then that's it. Debate over. The on-field umpire's decision is final. The third umpire cannot overrule that, is my understanding. Although the rules don't explicitly state that. They sort of just insinuate that the third umpire can't overrule it.
Definitely always go with the real-time view of it that you've only got to see once rather than having another look at it. Definitely the right way to go there.
What's interesting is that's just not what was happening in Australia for the India-Australia series. Gary Lyon bowled into Pujara. We saw Pujara do it in this test match. One of the things Pujara does is sort of go down the wicket and sometimes kick the ball away, but with his bat kind of near his pad. I think on balance, he's probably not playing a shot there, but it's close. There's certainly some debate to be had. And so what was happening was that Pujara was coming down the wicket, he was kicking the ball away, and then Payne would ask the umpire, is he playing a shot? And the umpire was saying, yes or no at that point, and that did lead to Payne reviewing one, which where in the Gabba test, which was
It's close, wasn't it?
yeah, like really, really fucking close to having Pujara out and could have changed the series. The actual protocol, I'm led to believe, is that on that occasion, Tim Payne should have been guessing, just like Joe Root was. Bizarre. But I mean, like the big failing here, not only that the rules are stupid, is that Rohit Sharma clearly wasn't playing a shot, and Rohit Sharma literally said, "I'm not playing a shot."
Yeah,
I mean, the bat was hiding behind the pad the whole time. It was so obvious.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, people who don't appreciate terrific application also bring up stupid things like that on Twitter, don't they? So, anyway, there's a bit here, Max. You said at the top of this segment that ultimately it wasn't costly. The umpiring decisions weren't costly. Like none of them had any real impact on the game.
We are lucky that is the case, because there were three really well. I suppose if you want Kohli's one on route, you could say four, but ultimately three really bad bits of umpiring just through what looks like sheer ineptitude, and ultimately, no impact on the game. But on another day, it could have made a huge difference, and that would have been bad, obviously.
Yeah, and that is the issue with not having neutral umpires. So typically now you have neutral umpires because of the pandemic, the Indian home test ones, and so
no use solving that with an extra review if the reviews are a load of bollocks.
Yeah, but that's it. Instantly, it makes you a target, right? And I mean, the people's opinion of the BCCI is not favourable anyway, unless you are an Indian cricket fan. So actually having Indian umpires and the BCCI combined when they're having shockers, instantly people putting two and two together and making five out of it and going conspiracy theories as Jack loves or whatever else. It just doesn't help what is going on. So we need to be, or the ICC needs to be supporting the umpires in the best possible way. I'm not saying umpires need to go out there, but as we said, you can do third umpiring or match refereeing from anywhere. You don't have to do it sat in the stadium. So Alternatively, they also let in 10,000 fans, and then they had to have home umpires. So it's just like you could get some umpires in, do you reckon? But never mind. Matt, what about the pitch?
The big one.
Should we address the pitch? This is going to be a world record cricket podcast. By the way, we're going into the 2-hour 30-minute area.
You laughed at me earlier when you said that we'll definitely get this done in about half an hour. Not sure. It's going to have to be a two-parter, I reckon. This is part one, and in about 15 minutes' time or an hour's time, however long it takes us to get through the pitch, we will bring you part two. Well, it won't be like that on YouTube, which is going to confuse everyone as well. The pitch. I mean, lads, to begin with, it's a bit ridiculous that we're going to have an actual discussion about some dirt used for a bat and ball game 6,000 miles away.
That's cricket, baby.
But yeah, that's cricket. And I think we sort of do a little bit. Max, have you got any thoughts on the pitch?
I have numerous thoughts on the pitch, and to be honest, I've been kind of struggling to get them into a coherent argument because I've got a lot of conflicting views. But ultimately, what I've settled on is that A, the pitch was bad. B, England didn't lose because of the pitch. England lost because they weren't as good as India, especially on that pitch. But I mean that's the short version.
Yeah, I mean, the conclusion I came to is that you can basically distill sport or the watching of sport down to kind of 2 points of view. There are the people who think like the winning is the most important part, and then there are the people who think the story and the journey to the game and the game itself is the most important part. And I think with this pitch, which I don't think was great, and we can get into the detail of why I don't think it was very good in a second, but I think people seem to be falling into basically two camps on this debate. The people who think that winning is most important are saying it's absolutely fine for the home team to do what they fucking want with the pitch. Great, India were right to do it, no problem. It was a test. India deserved to win. England shouldn't complain. And then there's the second camp, which is more about, I guess, the playing of the game. And I think that's probably where I sit. And those people and I don't think the pitch was very good. And that's not because it benefited India, which it did. It's more because it completely banjaxed the whole game by T on day one, because Rohit Sharma had played well for 60 overs. One team literally could not win anymore. And I think that's bad, basically.
Yeah.
That's
because
really
at that
bad.
point you don't have an even contest, do you, between
Yeah,
bat and ball? I think for me, like, to flesh it out a little bit, you can have. I mean, one of the great things about cricket is that going overseas and winning an away series is really difficult because the conditions you're not used to the conditions, and they're different, and they bring you different challenges and challenge different skills that you have to overcome, and that is entirely possible in India with a good pitch. Like, the pitch will naturally turn more, and when it deteriorates, it turns more than it does in other countries, and that's something you have to negotiate. That can be done with a good pitch. A good pitch, I think, in cricket is not like, it's not dependent on where it is. It's a ubiquitous thing. It involves something that, is probably at best to bat on maybe day two, gets worse to bat on by the end, creates a fairly even contest between bat and ball where both sides have to work. And within that, there can be different challenges for each team. And I think what we saw was one that wasn't a balanced pitch, because the ball was spitting all over the place by day three and possibly the afternoon of day two. And it's like, you could just look at it and see it, like, from the crease 2 meters out at either end by the end of day two, like the start of day three, it was a completely different color. It was just like sand. It was ridiculous. But the people who make the argument that India go overseas and England and they'll prepare a green top, it'll hoop everywhere, and they'll be bowled out for 50, are entirely right. That is a entirely valid argument. They will go overseas and that will happen to them. And that's also bad. You can't really blame India for doing it, because it happens everywhere. It's symptomatic of a wider problem, basically.
Yeah, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's a team of boffins in Lords right now working out how to get an extra degree of swing out of the Duke's ball this summer. Like, you can be absolutely sure of that, and they'll be passing that information on to Anderson and Broad, and basically it's a bit of a race to the bottom, and I think it's sad. I just don't think 300 or 330 should ever be a match-winning score.
Yeah.
In the first innings.
Well,
and it was.
Even before, haven't we? We've said in an India series, if you want a good first innings score, you have to get at least 450. And then we're looking at 330 being unassailable.
I'd probably also say that saying bad is probably the wrong way of phrasing it, because I think that comes with connotations that maybe India sort of have pulled a fast one on England here, or that this pitch in some way massively benefits India, but England just cannot play on it. And that's not true, because we've just seen India absolutely fucking smash England on this wicket. And we can see there's a massive gulf in ability between Ashwin and England spinners and Rohit and England's batters.
The dice is slightly loaded.
I thought it was a massive risk for India, actually.
Well, what I would say is extreme is probably the way to put it. Like, that pitch was extreme, and the CricViz did an article on this, and it spanned more than any pitch, or I think it was in the top 5 pitches in the world, any test, that in terms of spin and bounce since they've had Hawkeye data, basically, which is, it's just not ideal.
And it was obviously a tactic. Because
your point,
gave it away? So it's obviously a tactic. We said it probably would be a tactic, and what gave the game away to me more than anything that it was a tactic was that they dropped Bumrah or rested Bumrah. We don't need you, mate. It's fine.
Yeah. I don't know if there's not really much more to say on that, is there? I mean, like, obviously England couldn't really deal with it.
Ross, did you have some final thoughts on the pitch?
All I would say before I sign off on it is, if Shubman Gill averages 65 in Indian first-class cricket, that cannot be an average Indian pitch. Like, and that's the other thing that people were saying on Twitter is, you go to India and it spins. The fuck it spins like that, mate. We've watched so much Indian cricket in the last 2 years. So much, and it wasn't a typical Indian pitch, and you don't have players with home averages of 90 and 80 and 68, or you don't have first class players like Shubman Gill breaking the team with an average of 65 in first class cricket. If games are wrapped up in like 5 sessions. Well, not 5 sessions, but like the conclusion is known after 5 sessions. So I complain about that, and I think in terms. We're set up for a really good series if the pitches are anything like fair. I think England are a lot better than we thought. India on a fair pitch, probably fair pitch. India on a pitch that doesn't spin that much are much more chaseable for England. They're still better. I think we've seen they're still better, but there is the possibility that we could have a couple of really good matches. And I think if we have another couple of pitches like that, we don't get that. And the result of that, the end game for pitches like that, are that India win the series 3-1. But why would anyone waste basically 15, 20 hours of their life watching the test match when you know that there's only one team that can win in those conditions? And that will eventually kill Test cricket, which has been going through a little renaissance in the last couple of months. And I mean, basically to the extent, I would say I would rather watch a 10-match T20 series than watch 2 test matches like that.
Shots fired. Would you rather watch the 100?
Yeah, probably. At least both teams could win the 100.
Anyway, so what can England do to actually improve on that? Because as Max, you mentioned earlier, Somerset, and I mean, you love Surrey. Like, there's no doubting you love Surrey. But last time that Somerset produced a spinning wicket, they got docked points, and it's kind of Hyderabad is kind of what its nickname is. Is that a real issue that a pitch turns from day one, or is it actually just a case of pitches are great if they turn from day one? It's just the explosion out the top of the surface and the kind of minefield that there is. What's your opinion on that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with a bit of turn. I think no one's complaining about going to India and seeing pitches that turn more. But it's when it's just there were balls in that game, and we didn't even get close to a fifth day that were literally unplayable. Like the one that got Joe Root, for example. I think Jack's highlighted that on Twitter in the past. That was ridiculous. That's the kind of thing that you don't want to be happening. You don't want to see puffs of dust off the top of a pitch in the first session of a game. Like, it's only going to go, particularly with the drier pitch, it's only going to go one way. That's the thing. It's not, there's not going to be any flattening out or anything like that. It's only going to get worse. So it's not conducive to a good game of Test cricket that you want to go for 5 days.
I would say, look at the way Kohli had to play in the second innings. So he was like, I was really proud of myself. I put the drive away. And it was like, you had to put the drive away because you were playing on a pitch which was a minefield, which basically meant that batters couldn't use their skills to score runs.
Yeah.
The best batter in the world couldn't use all of his skills to score runs on that. He had to completely change his game.
Yeah.
And fair enough. Like that's why India deserved to win, because they had players capable of doing that. But that's not really the cricket that I want to see all the time.
Yeah. And then it's back to your point again at the start, isn't it? The two types of camp: win at all costs or
I think probably the extremism point's one as well. Like, as I get older, into my late 20s, I think I'm less interested in extreme points of view. I'm more of a centrist. I'm certainly more of a cricketing centrist.
Join me on the fence, Jack.
I'm an anti-extremist when it comes to extreme conditions. I don't think you should be using the Duke's ball on green seamers in England. I don't think you should be. I mean, the way they prepared this pitch was to roll an inch of clay onto the actual soil below. And so, what do you think's going to happen in 30-degree heat if you do that? Anyway,
exactly what they knew would happen.
What we should be really clear on before we move on to the IPL auction is that India 100% did deserve to win. It is in many ways personal preference. I think our pitch gripes, and we're in for a great series. We are in for it's 1-1. England have already exceeded expectations. The day-nighter coming up, which we'll talk about on our show out on Monday, I think, is going to be really exciting, I reckon. What more do our listeners need to know, Ross?
That they can find the other episode where we do the IPL auction preview with Dan Weston on another show on YouTube. Another link on YouTube.
So that's a good point.
It's appearing just here right now.
The podcast will be out in one usual block. It'll be about 2.5 hours long.
Strap in,
use up
folks.
all the data on your phone. The YouTube show we've split into two halves because you know. Hopefully you enjoy it. Make sure you like and subscribe and all of those other things that people on YouTube tell you to do.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.